Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order, and we'll begin with our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandotte peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We can get an adoption of the agenda for February 24th, 2026 public planning meeting. Moved by Councilor Regis Spagnuolo, support by Councilor Carrick. All in favor? And that carries. Any disclosures of community interest? None? All right, so the purpose of the meeting, the Planning and Development Department of the Town of LaSalle has received an application for a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Jackie and Christopher Lozon, represented by RJ Planner, care of Rita Jabor, regarding approximately 0.81 hectares of land known as 6525 Howard Avenue, currently designated Rural Agricultural District and zoned Rural Residential Zone, RR, to introduce a site-specific official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the development of a detached accessory residential unit in the rear yard. Pursuant to the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, a notice of public planning meeting dated February 2nd, 2026 was published on the town's website, placed in the mail and emailed at least 20 days prior to the meeting date, and a copy of which is attached here too. Report PD-05-2026 dated January 29th, 2026 contained herein has been prepared to provide the public with pertinent information as to the specifics of the application during the statutory public planning meeting. So now I will turn it over to our Manager of Planning and Development, Ms. Brsick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for the application, actually, the way we're going to start is the applicant's planner is going to provide her presentation, Ms. Rita Jabor, and I believe she is via Zoom. Following her presentation, I'll give any following comments, and we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Ms. Jabor, are you here? I don't know either. Ms. Jabor, are you able to unmute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
You can go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, good evening, and through the chair, my name is Rita Jabor, and I am a registered professional land use planner, and I'm also consultant for the applicants tonight, who are Jackie and Christopher Lozon. They own the property located at 6525 Howard Avenue, and we're here tonight with a request for a site-specific official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to permit an additional dwelling unit in a detached structure on the subject lands. And at this point, I'm just going to share my screen, so please just give me a moment so I can pull up the presentation. Hey, can I just get confirmation that you can see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So moving on to the next slide, we're just going to begin with an introduction to the subject lands. The subject lands, as I mentioned, are located on Howard Avenue. They're on the west side of Howard Avenue in the town of LaSalle, and they're located outside of the urban boundary area of the town of LaSalle in an area that's normally referred to as the Rural or agricultural district or as a prime agricultural area. The subject lands presently have or contain one existing single detached dwelling, which is the primary residence of the applicants. And that dwelling is 336.30 square meters in total size. The subject lands also contain two accessory structures, one pool shed and one barn. The subject property has access to municipal water. The existing single detached dwelling is connected to municipal water, but it does not have access to municipal sanitary services. So it is serviced, the existing dwelling is serviced by a private on-site septic system. And as I mentioned earlier, the use of the lands is primarily for rural residential purposes. There is no agricultural activity or component on the subject lands. So moving on, we did provide, and this was provided in the agenda package as well, we did provide an aerial image of the location of the subject lands. So you'll see them there highlighted in blue. As we mentioned, they're along Howard Avenue with that primary access from Howard Avenue. And there are other rural residential uses within the block that's bounded by Huron Church Line Road and Howard Avenue. In this slide, we just give you a bit of a description of the policy context respecting the subject lands. So looking specifically at the official plan designation and beginning with the County of Essex's official plan designation for these lands, they are located in an agricultural area. Looking at it specifically as per the designation in LaSalle's official plan, they are designated rural and agricultural district. And then looking at the zoning, they are zoned rural residential under your zoning bylaw, which is 8600. And in this specific zoning district, a single detached dwelling is a permitted main use, and accessory buildings and other types of accessory uses, such as home occupations, are also permitted, but additional dwelling units are not permitted in this zoning district. Looking at the neighborhood, the primary land uses that surround this property, especially within the block that's bounded by Huron Church Line and Howard Avenue, the primary land use is rural residential. And again, these are residential uses in rural areas. Some have agricultural components beyond the block, and some don't. There are agricultural uses on the other side of Howard Avenue on the east side. Specifically, there are cattle barns and livestock facilities within 750 meters of the subject lands. And this is of importance when evaluating the application, which we'll talk about a bit more when we talk about the support studies that were submitted in support of the application. So moving on, we just wanted to give you a better description of the proposal for the additional residential units. So as was explained, this is for a detached additional residential unit, meaning it would be in a completely separate building than the existing single detached dwelling. And specifically, the proposed ARU, we'll call it an ARU as an acronym, will have a total building footprint of 297.29 square meters, but the actual living area, which will be comprised of 2 bedrooms, kitchen facilities, washroom facilities, is only 167.23 square meters. And the reason why the footprint is larger than the living area is because the footprint also includes an attached garage, which is 27.87 square meters, specifically for storage purposes. A covered porch of 102.19 square meters. And in terms of its height, it is going to be 1 story, and it will have a maximum height of 5.2 meters. In terms of servicing, it will be serviced in a similar fashion to the existing single detached dwelling. It will be actually connected to municipal water from the existing dwelling, and there will be a new private septic system installed to supply both the ARU and the existing single detached dwelling. In terms of parking, the parking for this ARU will be located on site on the existing driveway and access area that currently serves the single family home. and 2 on-site spaces are proposed to service this ARU. So in this slide, we provide you with the site plan, which again was attached to the agenda. And this site plan just shows the location of the proposed ARU. It's called off as an ADU on the site plan. You'll see it hatched out near the south end of the property. And this site plan also gives you a perspective of size of the proposed ARU in relation to the existing single detached dwelling, which has a dotted overlay. And you'll also see on this site plan the existing driveway, where the 2 proposed parking spaces are located, as well as a proposed walkway, which is proposed to connect the ARU to the parking area, as well as the method in which the ARU will be connected to the existing septic system, which will be shared with the existing single-family home. And on the next slide, we have prepared for you building elevations, specifically showing the front elevation, the rear elevation, the right elevation, and the left elevation of the proposed ARU, so you can visualize what it would look like. And as you can see on the rear elevation, you'll see the location of the garage. And on the front location and some of the side elevations, you will see the location of that covered porch. So on the next slide here, we wanted to provide you with pictures of the existing site, and we wanted to show you where this ARU is proposed to be constructed. So in the top picture, you'll see a picture of a barn. This barn is existing. It will be demolished, and the additional residential unit will be located in the location of that barn. You can see a better picture of the barn in the bottom picture. And then off to the right, you'll see a visual of the current parking area and a part of the existing dwelling. And it'll also visualize for you the location of the parking area for the 2 additional spaces. So on the next slide here, we're going to explain the reasons for the amendments. And we mentioned earlier that in the RR zone, under the zoning bylaw, that additional residential units are not permitted. They are permitted in other zoning districts, specifically within the urban area, but not within the rural residential area. And they're also not permitted in the rural agricultural area in LaSalle's official plan. So hence the need for an official plan amendment as well as a zoning bylaw amendment. And we also wanted to clarify that this additional residential unit is actually to provide full-time housing accommodation for the applicant's parents. This is a very common reason that people propose to construct additional residential units. Sometimes it's for aging parents, and other times it's for younger children who haven't been able to get into the housing market yet. So in order to complete and progress this application for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, we were required to prepare some studies to help justify the proposal. And beginning with a minimum distance separation report, feasibility report, we were required to do one to ensure that the setback distance of the proposed additional residential unit from those nearby livestock facilities was appropriate. We were also required to complete a septic analysis for the new septic system that was proposed to ensure that the total size of the septic system didn't require any additional approvals from the ministry, and that it was going to be appropriately sized for both the existing dwelling and the additional residential unit. And we were also required to prepare a planning justification report, which positioned the proposal with respects to provincial interests under the Planning Act, and which prepared justifications to ensure that the proposal was consistent with the provincial planning statement, as well as justifications to ensure that the proposal conformed with the County of Essex official plan. So on this slide, we just provide a more thorough outline of the proposal and how it meets the tests that planning authorities have to ensure it is consistent or conforms with. And that's beginning with matters of provincial interest under Section 2 of the Planning Act. Because the proposal is located in a prime agricultural area, there might be impacts to agricultural resources, and the province tells us that we are to protect those agricultural resources. However, in this situation, the subject lands are not used for agricultural purposes, so no part of agricultural activity is affected by this proposal. And the MDS1 feasibility report found that it does not have any harm in terms of any nuisances resulting from its location close to those livestock facilities. So in terms of meeting the matter of provincial interest, the proposal itself will not impact agricultural resources. And in fact, it also provides for a different form of housing, being an additional residential unit, which is also a matter of provincial interest that planning authorities have to have consideration for. So the second test is determining whether the proposal was consistent with the provincial planning statement. So in 2024, there were amendments made specifically for policies respecting additional residential units in prime agricultural areas. And the PPS now states that additional residential units shall be permitted. So that's a directive. And the PPS actually states that you could have up to 2 additional residential units in prime agricultural areas. And one of those can be outside of the existing single detached dwelling. So in this particular case, the proposal does meet the intent of the provincial planning statement, even though it's only proposing 1. And specifically, the provincial planning statement tells us that the proposal must comply with minimum distance separation formulas, which this does, as demonstrated in the MDS1 feasibility report. It has to be compatible with surrounding agricultural operations, which it is. It has to have appropriate sewage and water services, which this proposal will have. It has to address any public health and safety concerns, which this proposal does address. There isn't any natural heritage features within or close to the property that would need to be further assessed, and this property is not within an area of natural hazards where there might be flooding concerns. The proposal also has to be of a limited scale, and it has to be located within, attached, or in close proximity to the principal dwelling or farm building cluster. So in this case, the proposed ARU is smaller than the existing single detached dwelling. It is located in close proximity to the existing single detached dwelling, even though it's not attached. And because it's not located on a farm property, it isn't located in such a way that would impact any agricultural operations. And for that reason, it minimizes any agricultural operations or agricultural production being impacted by this development, which is the last test. In terms of the County of Essex's official plan, it largely mimics the provincial planning statement. So again, the County of Essex official plan was recently adopted and approved by the ministry, and it sets the same standards for allowing additional residential units in prime agricultural areas as the PPS. In terms of conformity with the LaSalle official plan, the LaSalle official plan doesn't allow ARUs in agricultural areas, but they do allow rural residences. So there are other types of uses that are similar to this that are permitted in rural and the agricultural designation, such as single detached dwellings and farm worker housing. So moving on, again, just to give a summary of that policy analysis, there was no concerns with minimum distance separation. The proposal will not impact agricultural operations. The proposed additional residential unit is of a limited scale because it's smaller than the main dwelling, and it will be located in close proximity to that main dwelling and in such a way that it will be able to connect to the driveway, the parking area, and the services. There are no concerns of compatibility with the surrounding rural residential uses, which are similar in nature, and with those surrounding agricultural uses, as demonstrated through the MDS report. The sewage and water services for the additional residential unit have been deemed to be adequate as per the septic analysis. There is sufficient water and sanitary capacity to service this use, and the roadway is designed to accommodate the traffic. This says commercial traffic, but the traffic for residential purposes. There is no public health and safety concerns, and there's no loss of agricultural land. So in terms of the proposed official plan amendment, the amendment will largely state that these lands will be permitted to have one detached additional residential unit. And specifically, it'll also note that the severance of that additional residential unit on its own separate lot will not be permitted. And this is to ensure that the decision is consistent with the provincial planning statement, which states that you cannot create new residential lots in agricultural areas unless it's for a surplus dwelling. So this is to ensure that that ARU will not be severed in the future on its own separate lot. And in terms of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, there is proposed to be a site-specific zoning for the site, which would allow one additional residential unit and a detached building. It'll set the gross floor area for the additional residential unit so that you can be assured that it won't be any bigger than the size that is proposed. And there'll also be a regulation that'll set the maximum total size for the garage and the covered porch, as well as a separate size for the living space. A regulation is also proposed that the ARU will be located within the rear yard, because for other properties within LaSalle that are permitted to have an ARU, ARUs are not permitted in the front yard. And there also will be a regulation for the servicing of the ARU, which will be by a private on-site septic system. So as a result of this notice and this proposal, the town did receive comments from the following agencies, and they included comments from the Essex Region Conservation Authority, who noted no objections and that an IRCA approval would not be required from their office because this property is not located within the regulated area. And they also received comments from Essex Power Lines, which stated that the applicant would have to contact EPL to confirm hydro servicing needs prior to construction. As of February 18th, we were not notified of any public comments on the application, but of course there may have been comments since that time, or there may be members of the public who are present in the audience tonight. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for your time, and I am available for questions, and I also see that the applicant is also online, and they'll be available for questions too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. I will now turn it over to administration for comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So I do agree with everything that Ms. Rita Jabour mentioned in her presentation. Same was thoroughly explained in my report as well that was provided. I would like to add and confirm that to date, no further agency comments were submitted, and to date and at all during this process, no comments were received from members of the public. I guess I also wanted to include the reasoning for the application moving forward. As you may have picked up from Ms. Rita Jabour's presentation, while the provincial planning statement does mention that these ARUs are to be permitted in prime agricultural areas, which this subject property is located in, to date, we just not have had the chance to play catch up with these new policies, which would require updates to our official plan and zoning bylaw. That was expressed to the applicant that of course, we do plan on making these updates. However, in the meantime, if they don't wish to wait for the town to play catch up, they're more than welcome to make such application, and here we are today for that. Administration has no concerns about the application that's been presented, the location of the building, nor of the servicing for the building. All requests for additional studies that planning and administration made were provided adequately so, and we have no concerns. Further to that, I'm available, of course, for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As noted, we haven't received any written submissions or anything to this point. I don't know if Ms. Lozon or Mr. Mary have anything they want to add. If not, I can go to council questions or comments. Nothing, council? Councilor Carrick?
Yeah, thanks. Nope. I think both presentations are excellent, very well laid out. And I see no trouble with this. Actually, I kind of like it. It gives an opportunity to protect family members or add space for that kind of thing. And it's not impacting anything, as you can see in the photos and what's been brought forward. So absolutely, I guess not a concern, but this might start something across the town as opposed to bringing stuff forward, which isn't really a bad thing. So I'm very supportive of this, and we'll move the recommendation at the proper time.
Councillor Segan?
Through you, Mayor Balasha, just one question. On figure 2 and figure 3, there appears to be a residence, 6535 Howard, abutting the property line. I just wonder what the distance is between the new unit that's proposed to be built and the existing home next door.
Thank you for your question through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have the measurement before me right now for what the setback is. However, and again, I can pass this on to Ms. Rita Jabbour for confirmation, but the proposed new accessory structure, being the ARU, is going to be set within our zoning bylaw requirements setback from the property line. So they're not requesting any extra reliefs from the setbacks.
All right, I appreciate that. And you know, because you're going to have full-time habitation and traffic now that's going to be using that driveway. That's why I just wondered, but you didn't receive any comments anyway from the neighbors, correct? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Burns?
Okay, is there one or two septic tanks? One for each dwelling? The old one will stay in place, or is the new one covering both and connected? My first question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question through Madam Mayor. So my understanding is that each dwelling, so being the main existing and the new ARU, will have their own tanks and they will use the same septic bed.
Thank you. Next one is servicing. Will there be one hydro connection or two? In other words, will the current one there, or there will be a separate new one for the new dwelling? Thank you. Through the mayor.
Sure, thank you for your question. Now the town doesn't provide the hydro connections, so they would have to reach out to, and I think they provided a comment as well, Essex Power, that they wanted to be contacted. So they'll be handling any future connections in that regard. The town's only connection to this site is actually with water, and they'll only be receiving one, the existing one.
And through your worship, again, one water main or two water mains? Please.
Again, just one.
Okay. The reason I ask those questions is that if you give them a separate hydro and a separate water connection, they can sever. I don't care what you write anything, because I know it's been done in the past and it may be going forward. So in the agreement, as stated, it's only going to be no non-severance, right?
It is non-severance, and anything outside the urban boundary only gets, I believe, one water line.
Yeah.
And for exactly the reason you stated, we don't allow severance of the properties outside the urban boundary. So it will be only the one, and then there will be the statement inside the agreement regarding severance as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Riccio Spagnolo?
Thank you, through you. So the questions that I did have for you were answered regarding the barn, the current barn right now, the size comparable to the new dwelling. So you answered that. And then the other question was, if you found any issues and you had stated that you don't find any concerns. So I'm happy to support.
I don't have any concerns. I think it's a need in the community, and I know the provincial policy statement states it's something we need to do in the future. My question to you is, when do we see an update on that to allow future ones?
Thank you for your question, Madam Mayor. It's a really good question. As much as I'd like to get everything done yesterday, with our current staffing, it's just not possible right now. I have it on my list to do. If it doesn't get completed this year, most definitely I plan for it as one of my goals for next year.
Perfect. And there's no deadline for us to do that, is there?
Again, there's no deadline precisely. It is something that's permitted already in the PPS, and the County of Essex's new official plan has it in play. I guess at this time, the only thing it causes is an application that owners would have to make, site-specific for each property. But once we put policies into our official plan and any regulations within our zoning bylaw, it doesn't necessarily mean they won't go through a zoning bylaw amendment. That's something we would still need to explore. So it's still a whole project to do.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Members of council, there is a recommendation. There's two to choose from. The second one. So
Move the second recommendation.
that the report of the manager of planning development dated January 29, 2026, PD-05-2026, regarding OPA-02-2025 and ZBA-09-2025 be received, and that council support one of the following options, and that is, if all issues are resolved at the public planning meeting, the requisite official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment and associated bylaws will be brought forward for council's consideration at a subsequent council meeting. Support by Councillor Regis Spagnolo. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much for joining us in person and online. Thank you for the presentation. Have a good night.
Thank you.